Welcome inside episode 714 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains, it's game day. The Ottawa Senators are going to put a 7-0 loss behind them and move on to Missouri, where Brady Tkachuk's homecoming will take on the St. Louis Blues.
And we have our friend Marc Methot back on the show. He's battling through stuff. It's his flu game, but he comes on and he delivers. We talk about a disappointing 7-0 loss and what are the Sens going to do with this decor?
Yes, lots of great conversations to come, and it's all brought to you by Farm to Fork. Check them out at farm2forkdelivery.ca and taste the Farm to Fork difference. Make sure you use promo code ZOOB15 for 15% off your next order. You will never go back to grocery store meats. This is the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Thank you for making Locked On Senators your first listen on this Monday, January 16th. The show is free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube, where the best way you can help the show grow is to like every video by simply clicking the thumbs up and liking the channel, subscribing to Locked On Senators channel. Be a friend, tell a friend as well. The word of mouth is a very appreciated way of growing the show. We want to wish a happy birthday to Sens prospect Tyler Boucher, who turns 20 today. Of course, Tim Stützle turned 21 yesterday. Unbelievable how much production he's had at such a young age. But Pilsy, this team needs to produce today. At least a goal.
Yeah, we'll set the bar at one goal. Yes, over under 0.5 goals here, because a 7-0 loss like that is there's no way around it. You could talk about the altitude. You could talk about it's the Stanley Cup champions. No, there's no excuse for a 7-0 loss. And I appreciate that the Ottawa Senators didn't try to make excuses. Brady Tkachuk said, this is embarrassing. Thomas Chabot said, most embarrassing game in my professional career. And yeah, dead on with that. That was tough to watch and to do a postcast for. But Ross, we're going to get some reinforcements here in this lineup for tonight's game.
Yeah, before I tell you who's back, just to finish off another player quote, Shane Pinto this morning saying, we didn't watch any video of the game on Saturday because we knew what happened. Bad, burn the tape game for the Ottawa Senators in Colorado. Tonight they're in St. Louis taking on a Blues team that's in a bit of a similar predicament. They're fifth in the Central Division, 45 points in 44 games, actually tied with Colorado. But the one difference, Colorado has a +7 goal differential. St. Louis, -20. St. Louis is below 500 at home as well, 8-10-2. Meanwhile, the Ottawa Senators are 8-10-2 on the road. So identical records, home versus road, but we know Brady Tkachuk's going to come to play tonight in his hometown. His dad will be in attendance, I'm sure, the whole family as well. And they're going to have another third line winger back. Mathieu Joseph looks like he's ready to return. What kind of impact do you think he could immediately have on this bottom six?
I mean, it's going to be an improvement, that's for sure. This bottom six, no offense to a lot of these guys, but the replacement guys, and I think that's pretty clear to everyone, as the top six has really done a lot of the point producing in the absence of guys like Mathieu Joseph, Tyler Mott, Josh Norris. The top six really has had to be good for this team to have any sort of success. I'm not going to put too much pressure on him because he's been out a while. What was his injury again? He's been out so long, I kind of forget what.
I forget too.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if it's if it's going to affect. You can't keep track of the injuries for this Senators franchise.
Lower body.
Yeah, so that's going to affect his skating, and he's a guy that relies on that speed to break the puck out of the zone and to be a good forechecker. So we'll see if that hinders him at all. But you know what? It's just nice to see a guy you have as a big part of your roster. He signed to a 4-year deal. The Nick Paul trade, you need him to kind of supplant that missing spot in the roster. So I'm very glad Mathieu Joseph is back in the lineup.
Yeah, it took a little bit longer, right? They said he's going to be out 2 weeks, and that was 4.5 weeks ago. So really good to see him back. I'm sure he's chomping at the bit. He was the guy who took part somewhat in the Sens skills competition as well. So did Josh Norris, who is likely going to make his return on Wednesday when the team gets back home to take on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Yes, those Pittsburgh Penguins who are still battling with the Islanders for the final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. Fun schedule coming up, by the way, Pilsy, for the Sens. Penguins Wednesday, Penguins Friday, Jets at home on Saturday, then the Islanders next Wednesday, a team I just mentioned battling for that last wildcard spot. And then we're finishing January at Toronto, home to Montreal, day off at Montreal before the All-Star break.
Yep. It's going to be a very interesting month.
And not only in terms of what is this team, but what are they going to do going forward? We're going to get to that with Marc Methot coming up. Not a normal game day preview. We'll touch on that in our 3 things to watch video coming out a little bit later on today. But Pilsy, great conversation coming up with Math.
Yeah, we're so fortunate to have his insight, and a guy that I think you can hopefully tell through the interviews. We're just chalking it up with him. Like, we didn't sit down and prep a lot of questions or any questions, I should say. It's just like, hey, it's our recurring segment with Marc Methot. Let's see how he feels about this team, and let's just chalk it up. And I feel like any interview we have with him just flows really good, and he gives us a lot of insight that, as 2 guys that have not played competitive hockey, we can't have that insight. So it's really, really a pleasure to have him on the show.
And it's also great from the standpoint that his type of play is exactly what this team needs. So I feel like for diagnostic purposes, he's able to discuss what they need, whether it's a prospect that we get into and how he knows if and when they're ready for the NHL, or if it's guys who are maybe on the trade market. He's also been calling a few OHL games, so we asked him about a Sens prospect that he had a chance to watch. All that's coming up. You're listening to Locked On Senators.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Athletic Greens. Guys, this has been something I've been making a part of my morning routine, and with Athletic Greens, it's great because you can have a subscription. So every 40 days, I get my package of AG1, and AG1 is so clutch for me because it's simple. It's just 1 scoop of the powder into your cup of water every morning, and you're getting 75 good vitamins, minerals, everything that you need to start your day off right. Because with this special blend of ingredients, it supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, your focus, your recovery, aging. All those things are incorporated with AG1. It's lifestyle friendly, so whether you're keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, it's good for you. No GMOs, less than 1 gram of sugar, and still tastes good. You gotta reclaim your health and arm your immune system with the convenient daily nutrition of AG1. Trust me. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is go to athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance from Athletic Greens.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Farm to Fork. Visit farm2forkdelivery.ca and taste the farm to fork difference. I'm pulling it up right now if you watch on YouTube, that the farm2forkdelivery.ca website is so easy to use and so solid when it comes to the interface and showing you exactly what you're going to get in your order, whether it's one of their bundles, the variety pack that we sent over to Marc Methot. He's already dummied all of his steaks. We'll get his complete reaction. And I don't even want to call a sales pitch, his honest feedback about what Farm to Fork is all about. Yep. You can shop their favorites. How about 10 filet mignons for $200? And you're like, okay, $200, but you're investing in 10 amazing meals for yourself, or 5 if you want to support your partner as well. Make them a nice little steak. There's no way to end a hard day's work than with a AAA 28-day age filet mignon. All of it's available at Farm to Fork. It's all flash frozen, so individual portions, and they're perfect for your busy lifestyle. You can go to farm2forkdelivery.ca. I would recommend the bundles. That way, if you want one thing or another, you have variety in your freezer. All you have to do at the shopping center is go and get your vegetables, your starches, and they'll take care of the head of the plate. What do you call it,
protein? Your main meal. It's the piece de resistance of your dinner.
Resistance. Leave it to Pilsy for a little en français to get the point across. Farm2forkdelivery.ca, and make sure you use our promo code when you go there. Why wouldn't you? Get 15% off with Zoob15. That's 15% off your order with promo code Zoob15 at farm2forkdelivery.ca. Go taste the farm to fork difference. You will never go back to grocery store meats. All right, Pilsy, let's get to our conversation. 35 minutes with Senators former defenseman. It's Marc Methot. All right, we now welcome on one of our best friends of the show. It's former Sens defenseman, TSN analyst, and all-around good dude, Marc Methot. Welcome back. How are you, brother?
I was just having this chat with you guys prior. I have such a bad headache on the left side of my head that it's making me nauseous. So you mentioned it there, Ross. This is my flu game right now. We'll see how this goes.
Cautiously optimistic you're going to get through it, which were the words that you said about the Senators last time we had you on. Where are you at now?
I don't want to join into the whole pile-on thing, like, as far as everyone understandably upset with the inconsistencies that are going on. I mean, the last week I was following along pretty well, but also a heavy focus on the junior game that I had to do on Friday, and I got another one this Friday. So it's been hard. I'm kind of balancing both. We look at the Seattle game. It was terrible, right? I mean, it was just an all-out frenzy as far as opening the floodgates and exchanging chances. Then they win, and then they go to Colorado and lay another egg. I think what really bothered me with the Colorado game, and I think many people would agree, was just the way they lost, right? And it's one game, but there is a trend here, and you're starting to see it where, at the start of the season, I was very apologetic as far as defending the team and the system and the structure. But you're starting to see it. You're really starting to see it now where it's undeniably there's something going wrong defensively. I think the main thing still is the common storyline that we've been discussing that I've been harping on over the last 6 months, and it's been the back end. They're desperate. I'm not going to go into a rant here where I'm going to start chirping all the guys on the back end, although I may lose that train of thought and go into it anyway at some point here. But they're really bad right now on the back end. And when a player like to finish that point, when a player like Thomas Chabot has a bad game, or Sanderson kind of gets exposed a little bit here and there, which is completely understandable. I mean, I was in the American League at that age, but then they're really exposed and everything is magnified, and you're seeing all the holes, and it'll be interesting to see where this goes here into the deadline. I'll let you guys chime in quickly. I want to know what you thought.
Yeah, and I want to get into kind of the solutions afterwards. But first, like losing 7-0 in Colorado, I'm looking at your numbers, Meth. Colorado is tough for you too. Like, is there something about the altitude that really does affect guys? Because it feels like a little unfair home advantage, I'm saying here.
Hey, listen, and I said this, I was transparent about it last week. I think we were in a thread talking to somebody, and I had mentioned, I can't recall ever having a legitimate good game there. Like I've had games where there were glimpses where I had a couple opportunities or something like that. But even like shared between Columbus, Ottawa, and my short stint in Dallas, I don't even know if I played in Colorado, but I can't recall having a very good game. And the altitude to me is the biggest thing. You feel it when you get there, and then you feel it even more so in the morning skate. You feel it in the pregame warmup where you taste a little bit of blood in your lungs. But that doesn't prevent you from making good decisions. But it certainly does affect your cardio, and it can affect your lungs and having to shorten your shifts. And, I don't want to say that that's the reason why they got rinsed 7-0. The biggest stat there, and you look at the numbers, there's one power play goal against, right? I can accept power play goals only because you're going to take bad penalties some games, and maybe a ref's got your number or things just aren't clicking. But 6 even strength goals. And I broke the ball down. I got this dumb sheet that I wrote down, but I don't know that I even need to get into it. Like, there's a couple there where Shabby wasn't looking very good, and we'll give him a pass on that. I don't think his game's been terrific as of late, but it was glaringly obvious in this game that he was very poor, and he's admitted to that, and he's called himself in it. So good for him there. I'm not even going to bother with that. Let's just give him the pass on that game. But I mean, you look at the bad, like Lekkonen's first goal, bad line change, all around poor coverage on Rantanen's second, or on his first goal. On Lekkonen's power play goal, the only power play goal against, Gambrell just gets kind of lost in the coverage coming back. Like every goal, there was somebody that messed up. And so, yeah, I mean, I could play analyst role, break everything down. It was just a big shit burger. They laid an egg that game. And the one thing I will say, just to kind of finish off my point on that specific game, Colorado, I think there was a stupid stat where I think they had 50 some odd dump-ins. Like it was an egregious number in that game where, what does that tell you? Well, they've identified an area, a weakness in Ottawa, and you go over this stuff before a game. It's written on the board. Expose their defense. Get pucks behind Ottawa's D. Make them make a play. Force them to make mistakes. And they did that. And I believe that was the only game all season in the NHL where there have been that many dump-ins. And we're talking about a possession team like Colorado. So obviously there's something there. But as far as that specific game goes, without touching on all the players and stuff, that's what I saw. I mean, I watched a lot of the highlights. I fast forwarded through some of the game on Sunday. I didn't watch the game on Saturday because I was obviously traveling back from Toronto, and I was gassed. But yeah, it didn't look good. It was a stinky one. And I think now going into St. Louis, no matter what they do lineup wise, I don't think it'll matter. I think for me, it's like they're so embarrassed with the way they played last game. You could come back with the exact same lineup and no changes, and you're going to see a much better effort put forth.
I would certainly hope you see a much better effort.
Right?
Mark, you got lucky missing that game. I watched the whole thing and did a postcast. It was a shit burger, like you said. I think that's a perfect way to describe it. Nobody was any good at all. And look, I've been to Denver. I know the altitude is a thing. Like you can feel it, like going on hikes, walking around, you feel it. But I don't know if I can allow the altitude to have a 7-0 effort. And I'm not saying that's what you were saying at all. But I just mean that, like, maybe if that's a result of being a little tired and not having your best game, that's fine. But if you look at the quotes from these guys, like Thomas Chabot, this is the most embarrassing game I've played in my career. Brady Tkachuk, the captain, being absolutely embarrassed by his team's effort. Have you ever been a part of a 7-0 loss, Mark?
He was in the playoffs against Pittsburgh. They beat you 7-0, and you came back for Game 6.
They beat us 7-0.
They beat you 7-0 in Game 5. And everyone thought,
okay, well, my only counter argument would be at least we were in the playoffs at that point.
Yeah.
But
nice.
which I suppose doesn't necessarily excuse that poor performance, but things can happen and whatever. But during the season we've had, we laid some pretty big eggs in Columbus. Like I remember being in Colorado back in the day when I was with Columbus and Brassard was there and we had Mike Commodore and a bunch of other guys.
Nice.
It was so ridiculous that, like, when we would get scored on in some of these games where we were just getting shellacked, we would like be kind of smirking at each other, like from the bench. Cause like we were so concerned about our plus minuses. Like it was to the point that it was so beyond, like ridiculous.
The score doesn't even matter at this point.
Yeah. Like it was comical. Like, I'd be like kind of going like this, like looking around on the bench and looking at Brass cause he got scored on. And I'm thinking like, oh my God. But I think bigger picture with regards to this current team right now, I just feel bad because I know what it's like to go to the rink when you're playing on a losing team and you lack that sense of pride that you yearn for as a player. I mean, there's not a better feeling than going to the rink knowing that, your respected team, that your opponent's going to respect you. And, there's a good chance you might win that game, right? Like you're not going in there with your head, tucked between your legs, kind of embarrassed. That to me is the biggest thing. And it's, not just that, but it's that relationship with the fan base and, wanting to be prideful and wanting to be proud that you're playing for the Ottawa Senators and that the fans have your back. And it's not like a poor me situation where, all you're concerned about now are your numbers are not looking stupid on the ice, and it's complex, but when you're on a losing team like this, I can't stress enough how painful it is coming to the rink every day and avoiding the coaches and like you're walking down the hallway and then the head coach is walking down the other way and you have to cross paths, and you just had a stinker of a game the night before. And it's like, is he going to call me into his office? Do I make eye contact with him? Do I say hi? It's just, this is the type of shit you should not be concerned about when you go to an NHL rink, right? Like, you should be focused on the task at hand, the practice, the game. So, there's a lot going on mentally, and it's certainly not a situation that any player enjoys being in, but some teams have to be. You can only have so many winning teams, and unfortunately Ottawa's on the losing side of it now.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
So how do you get that pride back? Like, what are some of the things that, as a team, look, there's no escaping it. And I like that the players, they didn't try to make excuses. They just ate it on the chin. They said, this is embarrassing.
Right.
We can't play like this. How do you try to give yourself that kind of, even if it's fake self-confidence, like, how do you as a team get together and try to build that back, especially when you're still on the road? You got another game in a couple days. It's not like they have a long stretch or something. Like, how do you get that spark back?
Yeah. And that's, Pilsy, that's tough, because you mentioned, like, even if it's fake. So sometimes you have to manufacture. And I had this chat with my dad. My old man came by the other day, and we were just talking about, because my son's playing hockey now, and I'm trying to figure out how to push him the right way. And, because my dad was a bit of a hard ass at times, and I'm trying to, like, change my approach a little bit with my son, but at the same time, when you're there, you can be hard on them. And so it's there's always challenges there, trying to find that motivation. So especially when you're on a losing team, and sometimes you have to just have a really short memory. And that was the discussion I had with my dad. I was like, listen, there were times growing up where, like, even in junior, that's when he started to just let me do my own thing, because there was nothing more he could say to me. As a player, you have to find it within yourself. Yeah, you can get some nice little stories from your support group and system, but at the end of the day, there's no denying what the situation currently is. And if you did have a bad game, it doesn't matter what your old man or your friends told you or how good you may be. You're only as good as your last hockey game. And so you have to try to ignore all that negativity, learn a little bit from it, but really just focus on that current game, and try to just focus maybe on that first shift, right? Like, okay, I'm going to go out there and I just want to make a couple good hard first passes, maybe get a couple hits in, and then I'll start feeling good about myself again. But that needs to happen. If you go back out tonight after a bad game, and your first shift, you get scored on or something happens, you're so fragile mentally that could really fuck your whole game up. So, collectively, they need to lean on each other now. Like, everybody's got to be in on it, right? Like, your partner can't have a night off. Your forward group can't have a night off. Everybody needs to work that much harder to come back, help each other out. The D's got to be there to support the forward group. Like, I look at some of these games where they're really getting waxed, or they're getting beat up on the score sheet. It's a lot of these issues, to me, are stemming from that back end. And so they've been relying so much on their scoring and on their offense. So when their forward group here in Ottawa does have a night off where maybe they're not in sync the way they should be, it's just all hell breaks loose and things just fall apart. So, at some point, and this is what we'll probably get into this chat with the general manager, with Pierre, and what's he going to do at the trade deadline? It's like, do you address that back end now? Like what's the right answer? I saw Mendez this morning at the gym before I cut it short, because I was being a baby and had to leave because of my headache. I was talking to Ian. I'm like, Ian, what do they do? Like, what do you do now at this point going into the deadline? Like, you're not necessarily a seller because your core's intact. Maybe you try to eliminate some players. I mean, and I don't mean like all these guys, but like guys like Holden, Hamonic, Zaitsev, like, at some point you got to move on, right? And look forward and bring up guys like JBD and Thompson and just let them play. And maybe best case scenario, you do drop a bunch of games and you improve your draft pick situation going into the summer. I mean, if I don't envy Pierre Dorion's position right now, because at the same time, you've got the pending new ownership kind of looming over your shoulder. Same thing with DJ and the coaching staff. So they're conflicted. They can't figure out, do they want to win games so that they can maintain their jobs potentially? Does that even matter at that point if new ownership comes in? And so do you sell and worry about the future, or do you pay more concern about your current situation and winning games so that you can potentially keep your job? Like, there's so much going on that I don't know what the right answer is anymore. I'm just sitting here and I'm just watching it play out in real time, and I don't know what to say anymore.
Well, we've said a few times that it's always darkest before dawn, but the way you described it, it really feels like we're into that period right now. We're going to get into some solutions coming up, but Mark, I got a trivia question for you. Which game with the Dallas Stars did you play the most ice time and the most shifts?
Oh, wow.
I would only bring it up for a reason.
Was it against? Couldn't have been against Ottawa.
In Colorado. In Denver.
No.
Wow.
You know what? Well, I have played some decent games there. I will say that. And I do remember that. I remember that game. I was just feeling it. Like I had like, I'm not offensive at all, but I was getting these lanes and I was skating the puck. I do remember now. Yeah. And I was getting some opportunity. I don't even think I got a point, but I was looking pretty offensive that night. And I think the coaching staff recognized it and kept putting me out.
Hey, were you playing with Klingberg that night?
No, no, the Klingberg experiment started early in training camp and it just, and I knew it would happen. Like it just didn't work because him and Esa Lindell had so much chemistry together. Right. And so I played a little bit more with Heiskanen and Stephen Johns. Those were the two guys that I was always being paired up with.
Oh, well, I don't think you played much with Stephen Johns this game. He played 5 minutes. You were up at 24, but +1 in a 5-3 loss. Let's go, Matthew.
There we go.
You had your guy.
See, I feel good now. Now I want to go back to the gym. Let's go.
Well, before you get to the gym, we got some solutions to get to. But first, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. More props, odds, and lines than ever before. Visit BetOnline. It's where the game starts, and it's where you can go if you want to be really mad after a 7-0 loss. Like, feel personal, like you were in the game. Matt talked about the players. What about the guys who put their hard-earned money online? Like Pilsy, like me, over at BetOnline. We do it responsibly, but we have fun doing it. BetOnline. More props, odds, and lines than ever before. You can go there for your podcast, your scores, your articles, basically anything to get you set up for the best odds at taking home some cash. So check them out right now. It's BetOnline. It's where the game starts. All right. Marc Methot with us. Meth, before we get back to the Senators, you called, was it Oshawa Kitchener on Friday?
Yeah.
Thomas Hamara, scouting report.
Yeah, okay. So obviously drafted, obviously a 3rd round pick. So I didn't expect him to be Paul Coffey by any means. But I expected a little bit more, but it was one game. Now, I don't like being critical of these teenagers because like this, there's so much that can change throughout their developing years, like that Hamara is currently going through as well. Reminded me a little bit of Brandstrom, maybe at the time, slightly taller. I know they have him listed at 6 feet. There's absolutely no chance he's 6 feet tall.
He's tiny. Yeah, I agree. Like that's a stretch.
I was having this discussion, Pilsy, with Victor Finley, the play-by-play. He's fantastic, by the way. But every time I look like at the stat sheets here, especially with junior players, because it reminds me of when I played. Anytime you see somebody listed at 6 feet exactly, there's a good chance they're 5'10". Yeah. So the numbers just are never accurate. And so, I was watching anyway, all that aside, none of that matters. It doesn't matter how tall he is. If he can play, he can play. First of all, he's the worst plus minus on his team. What do I have him listed down here? I think he's got about 11. Yeah, he's got 11 points through 27 games. He was okay. I think there's a lot of potential there. I don't want to be too critical because again, it was one game and I'm calling a whole game. So I'm not focusing in on one individual in particular, but he's exactly what Ottawa already has a lot of. You know what I'm saying? So I'd be a little more fired up if I was watching a player like Clevin or anybody else, a player that Ottawa genuinely needs at the moment. Hamara just reminds me a lot of what they kind of have in Thompson, not JBD per se, but as far as that like mid-level size kind of guy, a little bit of offensive, probably. He leans offensive, but isn't putting up spectacular numbers. So that's where I'd have him now. I'm going to reserve judgment. Going to give him another year or two to see exactly where he's at, but I don't know. He doesn't strike me as a pro yet. I think he still has a lot to learn.
Yeah, I think he's someone that, you can wait for, though. That's the
Yes,
nice thing that the Ottawa
totally.
Senators have kind of more blue chip prospects on the back end waiting here. And I think that's a perfect segue to get into. You talked about maybe the Ottawa Senators start moving on from the veteran guys on the back end, the Holdens, the Hamonicks, the Zaitsevs. And there's guys, JBD, Lassie Thompson, those guys are trying to make their way up there. JBD was called up now with Zub out here.
Yep.
Do you think this is a year where you really focus on having JBD try to play big top minutes in Belleville and have him get really confident and ready for next year? Or is this year, like we said, this team is not going to make the playoffs, but they're also not like obviously tanking either. So it's kind of awkward. Right. And you want to see what you got from guys. Do you think JBD should be really focusing on developing right now? Or since it's a bit of a lost season in the NHL, just get him up to the NHL playing big minutes here?
Yeah. So, and I've thought a lot about that because I figured we'd be getting into it at some point. I'm conflicted with this because I believe that him, and I'll include Thompson in this discussion as well, where I'm in the belief that they need tons of AHL reps, right? Like get the reps in, play on a competitive team.
Yep.
Keep getting better. But at the same time, the league is a little different now than it was when I played, where even in my second year in the American League, where things were starting to get they were getting easier for me, yet I still wasn't confidence-wise ready to make that jump. So my second year in the American League was like a yo-yo. Like I was just up and down all year, a lot like sort of like JBD minus the injury that he had. But realistically speaking, similar to what his season probably would have looked like had he been not injured. Like where I really figured it out in my game, and I can say this because JBD's probably more comparable to me than he would be with a more skilled individual, right? My third year, I was ready. Like in the American League, it got to the point where the game was very easy and I was starting to just rush the puck all the time. And, my speed and my size separated me from a lot of players that I was playing with at that level specifically. And so I'd get the call up and I'd look pretty good. But I never stuck in Columbus. And then finally the next year, I made some stupid comments in the newspaper because I was frustrated during training camp. And that kind of motivated me to have a really good camp and stick. So the reason why I say that is with JBD, I think you can bring him up. My only concern would be I don't want him to be surrounded by a losing culture where everything seems very inconsistent. The boat's rocking, and you don't want that to affect his development, right? Like, and again, the counter argument to that would be, well, look around the NHL now and how young it is, and usually these players need about a year and a half tops of real development before you get a really good picture of where they're at. I would like, just for argument's sake, sure. I'd like to see him play a consistent, well, even the rest of the season or 20, 30 games, whatever it is, just show me what you got. And this can be a really good benchmark for him. I don't know that they have any other options. I think their hand has been forced. You mentioned Zub out now. And he's had a tough go too, injury wise. So now it's like, okay, bring him up, see what he can do. And this can be his little audition. And if he can maintain some pretty consistent and strong play, and I want to see him not just survive out there. I think for me, and why I get critical sometimes of these players is I don't want them to come up and look like an American leaguer. I want them to be undoubtedly, like just without a shadow of a doubt, an NHL player. Like knock the door down and show me what you got. And this is a great opportunity for him now, because there's a lot less pressure put on the team. I think most people are coming to the realization that the playoffs are sort of out of the picture now. Now they're not mathematically eliminated. They're far from, and I know that. I just don't see them making any catching up on some of these other teams at this point. So show me some of these younger guys, what they have. Like, and I had it written down, like, you got to move on from some of those bets on the back end. They're not going to be here long-term anyway. And once you do that, I think you'll get a good idea. And then if that way, also another good thing would be if JBD is playing, then it gives you a good idea whether he sticks or not going into next season. And then you can make adjustments as far as who you go after in acquisitions, right? So that's where I'm at now. And I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what the exact right answer is, but I'm comfortable with him being there as long as it doesn't fuck up his development.
Yeah, so I'd be all for that. Now I'm reading some quotes here from 32 Thoughts podcast. Elliot Friedman, Jeff Merrick obviously have their finger on the pulse, and this quote is wild to me and almost the opposite of what we're talking about, of getting rid of some of these older players that aren't a part of the future. The quote
Right.
is, I think the Sens are still going to go out and get a defenseman. I've heard they
no.
consider it important that they get somebody to finish the year off strong. They feel the players need it and find it unacceptable to send the players the message that they can just wilt now. I don't know if it'll be Dumba, but I wouldn't be surprised if they got a rental. I think they want to show players and their fans that they're not going to coast and that they'll compete as hard as they can. If they have to make a move to get someone, they'll do it. Does that not sound more like self-preservation for the GM and head coach?
Yeah, you just took the words right out of my mouth.
Hey,
I mean, it sounds admirable, right? But I don't like what.
Well, here's the thing too. Like, I get what he's trying to do, but here's the problem. The Ottawa Senators have finished the last 2 seasons red hot. They finished the season so good, and fans and the whole message is, we're going to ride this momentum into training camp and into next season. And then they lay an absolute stinker of a month in October and especially November. So if that had been the case where the end of the year they have momentum and then that carries on into the start of the next season, hell yeah, let's get a new defenseman. Let's trade a 3rd-round pick, whatever, and let's build that momentum going into next season. But we've seen that boost at the end of the year in April doesn't stretch all the way to October months later. So for that reason, I'm seeing that. I'm reading through the kind of smoke screen, and I'm seeing that more as a, hey, I'm going to try to save my job here if I'm Pierre Dorion.
Yeah, and how do you argue with that, right? I mean, it's exactly what it looks like. I look, if I'm right now, if it's me, the hard decision, and we talked about it at the start of the show, where it's like there are so many contributing factors to all these random decisions that are being made, right? Like you mentioned, the pending ownership, jobs at stake, and real thin on the back end. And do you address it now? And look, if you can address it now, knowing that you're going to bring in a legitimate player and sign him to term, or that already has term. I mean, I don't know what you'd give up. That's the kicker here. Then yes, I don't care if it happens in the summer or now. Sure, go for it. Get rid of. You're going to have to drop a prospect probably, and a high pick, and you bring in a guy that's competent and that you have for the next 3 years, give or take, or you have some sort of assurance that he will probably sign. Then go for it. But to suggest that it's a rental for the sake of salvaging, any sort of respectable finish to the season, I just doesn't check out to me. Doesn't make sense.
No. And I guess a name that kind of fills that need that you were saying, where they're going to be here a little bit longer, but I'm not sure if it's a fit either. Although I probably would say it's more so than a Dumba or some of the other names we've heard. What are your thoughts on Mattias Ekholm coming in, as he seems like he's on the chopping block in Nashville, signed for 3 more years after this one?
Yeah. Well,
what's the AAV on that, Ross?
Too high, in my opinion, 6.25.
Yeah. Okay. I like the player.
Yeah.
My concern is, and I don't have my numbers in front of me, but I'm pretty sure he's like 32 years old, right? I think he's 32. So
yes,
the age is a concern, because it would immediately remedy your back end for at least the next year or two. Like, the reason why I'm bringing up the age thing is because things fall off very quickly once you get it around that range. I mean, for me, it did anyway. I mean, my body just started going on me, big physical defenseman. Yeah. He's not quite as physical, but he's still very competent in his own end, makes good decisions with the puck. I like him. Big fan of the player. Would he be an immediate help? Absolutely. He goes right into your top 4. He can do whatever. He can eat up a ton of minutes. I'm just concerned moving forward. But I mean, I guess at this point, how picky can we get, right? Like, they've dropped the ball on some of the previous acquisitions over the last couple seasons. It hasn't been great, at least on defense.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with it. Depends what you're giving up. I'm concerned about longevity and health. He seems like he's probably healthy right now, and he's doing good. So if you have him for the next 3 years, even playing at the pace that he's playing at, then that's a win. But I don't know what you give up. And you're right. You guys mentioned the dollars there. The AAV is a little high, but you're probably going to have to pay somewhere north of 4 million for a legit top 4 guy anyway, right? So, but it gets complicated because then you're at some point you got to sign Sanderson and so on, and it's like, oh boy, now you're looking at a cap team. It's tough, and how do you justify it when you're in the basement right now, right? So, again, I don't envy the position of Pierre. It's not an easy position to be in.
Pilsy, it feels weird for us even talking about like the cap after so many years where
we're
capping. Like it would just, if you go to cap friendly, it was just like 1 year of contracts. Now it's how do you fit pieces around, and you've got other pieces coming back. Josh Norris looks like he might make a return. You've been off for a while after long injuries. How long should fans expect it? Even though he's been practicing for quite a while now, how long do you think it'll take for him to get back up to the Josh Norris that we expect?
Oh, that's a tough call. I mean, his bread and butter is obviously the shot, right? The shot off. Yep. I shouldn't say it's his bread and butter, but it's one of his strengths as far as points go.
Definitely.
But the two-way play, that's a physical job. Being good on draws, being sound defensively, fighting through traffic on breakouts. I mean, a centerman, you're taking a lot of licks. You carry a ton of responsibility with the puck. It'll take him a couple games, but I mean, he's young and the man's an animal apparently in the gym, like trains really hard. He's lean. He's in great shape, takes good care of himself. So I'm sure he's been skating like crazy, right? It's been his shoulder. I mean, his legs still function. So he's been doing all the bag skating. Yeah. I mean, it's going to take a couple games. I saw a little chatter about the concern that he may be coming back too early potentially or whatever. I don't think people should be concerned there. I think after what happened with Pinto, this team's on high alert and they have a fantastic training staff. So they're going to be making sure that there's no risk if he does go back out there. Having said that, there's always risk in any contact sport, but I think having him back will only help. Obviously, I don't think that's groundbreaking news. You're going to get your two-way guy back who hopefully will drive the offense on either one of those top lines and be good in his own end, really good on draws, yada, yada, yada. So it'll help. I just hope that he's ready and he's at 100% if he does come back. That would be my only stance.
Yeah, it's been weird for me, Mark, because part of me is just like, we've seen the Sens, we've seen them rush centermen with shoulder injuries and it hasn't worked out with Pinto. But like you said, like, the guy's not made of glass. He's been out for so long. He's practicing. Eventually, you got him, put him back in. So I think it's about time for the Sens to put him back in. And speaking of recovery, though, to recover, you need some protein in you. We sent you a little gift package from our friends at Farm to Fork. Have you had a chance to try any of those? Do you grill up any of those steaks on your road to recovery here? Nice.
They're all gone. I ate all of them and they were unbelievable. All those steaks, man. And I really appreciate you guys sending those over. I made quick work of them, even without the barbecue. Now that it's freezing out, I just fry them up on the pan. And
nice.
My wife and I eat usually half her steak as well. So it's been great. So feel free anytime, guys. If you want to send a treat over my way after a little while, I won't say no. Great steaks.
Will, man. With our friends at Farm to Fork. And we know some of the Sens get on board with Farm to Fork as well. And hey, I just got confirmation tomorrow. So final question for me. Mike Rupp coming on the show, former teammate of yours.
Oh.
You got any stories that we have to tee Rupper up with?
No, I remember playing with him. I guess in the American League.
You were super young, right, at the time?
Yeah, I was a rookie, green, didn't know anybody. But I just remember seeing him come in and just look like a guy who probably had a family of 5 kids, like fully developed man, big beard. He's bald, really tough, very scary, but a really good dude, like super good guy, very smart. We had him in Syracuse during a season where we had a lot of tough guys coming and going, and Rupper was there. And I think eventually that year he ended up moving and ended up on an NHL team elsewhere. I'd have to look at the numbers again. But yeah, great guy. I don't have any specific story other than I know he played for the Trashers for a little bit.
Yeah,
so maybe you guys will be able to grill him.
Yeah, the year before. That's hilarious.
So, but yeah, he does great work. I watch all of his stuff on TV, and I'm a big fan.
Yeah, same. I'm excited to pick his brain. You know that his first ever playoff goal was a Stanley Cup winning goal?
I did not know that.
That's decent.
Not a bad first goal.
It was right after they played Ottawa in the conference final. He was a healthy scratch for that whole series, made his playoff debut in the Stanley Cup finals, and had 3 points in 4 games, including the cup winning goal. So decent little resume there. But it sounds like the real question is we're going to have to ask Rupper about Meth. Who's this young kid? I mean, he got a primary assist on one of his goals.
He won't remember anything. I'm a little blip on his radar at that time anyway.
That's hilarious. So next time the Sens will already be back home. When's your next broadcast on TSN?
Oh gosh. Yeah, Sportsnet has a large amount of games now until February. I think I'm back February like 11th or 13th, one of those days there where they're back. So until then, I've got another junior game and just going to lay low and watch them on TV.
You're going to be in the house for Neela's retirement game?
Probably. Yeah. Unless I'm working it, which I guess I'm there regardless.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll be there. What do you mean this retirement game though?
Jersey retirement.
A jersey retirement.
Did we not already? Oh no, we just announced it. I'm sorry. There's been so much going on. Yeah, I was there for the announcement of it where we had him in the booth and interviewing. But yeah. Of course I'll be there. I'll be looking forward to it.
All right, we'll see you there. We're coming back for it. We're fired up for that. And maybe we'll get pints at the Glebe Central Pub while we're home. But gonna be great to meet you, Matt. And looking forward to doing this again soon, brother. It's been too long.
See you guys next week.
All right, you listening to the Locked On Senators. Stay tuned tomorrow. Mike Rupp joins the show for Brandon Piller and Marc Methot. I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.